This video is sponsored by Squarespace. From websites and online stores to marketing tools and analytics, Squarespace is the all-in-one platform to build a beautiful online presence and run your business. Check out squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/scalemodeling to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Squarespace is the all-in-one platform to build a professional website, online store, or portfolio. It's easy to claim a domain, create a custom site that matches your style, and brings your ideas to life. All websites are optimized for mobile. Content automatically adjusts so your site looks great on any device. You can use customizable galleries to display images and videos in a unique way to completely match your style and bring it to your audience. Every Squarespace website and online store comes with a suite of integrated features and useful guidelines to help maximize prominence among search results. Thanks Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Head to squarespace.com/scalemodeling to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain using code SCALEMODELING. During the initial look at the body, I found that the panel lines themselves are already nice and deep and don't need any adjustment or scribing, so that step could be skipped and I could move straight on to sanding. I took a 600 grit sanding sponge, sanded the entire body, cleaned it off a little bit, and then moved it onto the Tamiya spray stand and into the spray booth for the first coat of primer on those hard to reach, easy to forget spots, and then of course the rest of the body as well. The primer that I'm using is Tamiya Liquid Gray Surface Primer. This is pretty much the same primer that you get in the Tamiya spray cans, but then just in a bottle. It does need a little bit of thinning down in order for it to go through the airbrush, so I used a bit of Tamiya lacquer thinner to thin it down until it was going through the airbrush nicely. I don't have an exact ratio, as every time I try to spray this, I need to add a little bit more thinners just to get it flowing through nicely, so it's pretty much just by feel. Once the first coat of primer was applied, I let it sit and cure for about 5 to 10 minutes and then moved on to applying a second coat of primer. The second coat of primer was set aside for about an hour to cure before I moved on to the next stage, and that is removing some of the imperfections in the primer. There were a couple of rough spots and also a couple spots of dust that needed to be sanded out. So I took out a 30,000 grit sanding sponge, sanded those out carefully, and then wiped it off with a paper towel to clean off all that sanding residue, and then moved it back into the spray booth. With this one, I decided to go with BMW i8's Frozen Gray. I'm going to start with those hard to reach, easy to forget spots first, as I always do, and then of course move on to the rest of the body as well for a couple coats of color. With the first coat now applied, I set the body aside to cure for about 5 to 10 minutes and then moved on to applying the second coat. I eventually moved on to a third and fourth coat as well, letting it dry 5 minutes in between each coat. Once the fourth coat was applied, I set the body aside for about 2 hours to cure and could then move on to applying a couple decals. So if you've watched the unboxing, you might have seen that there are a couple decal sheets with various different colors for all the Porsche logos and stripes around the body. I decided to go for a combination of a white Porsche logo itself and then an orange stripe on the side. With the decals on the engine cover now completed, I could move on to the decals on the side. I apply a little bit of decal setting solution first and then put the decal on top. Once the decal on the left side was completely positioned, I could move on to doing the same thing on the right side. After positioning the decals, I applied a bit of decal softening solution to form them to the body, let that cure for a bit, and then took out a new blade to cut along the decal in the panel line so it folds over nicely and the panel line will still be visible. Once the decal was cut in all the places it needed to be cut, I could move on to folding it over inside the panel line to reveal the panel line, of course, and not have that disappear after clear coat. I'm just applying a little bit of softening solution with a brush and gently pushing it in place. I let that cure for a bit and then could move on to applying the Porsche script on the side. Again, a little bit of softening solution for underneath the decal to help adhesion and also conform the decal a bit better, and then I could place the decal on top and have that fit in place perfectly. There were some orange stripes for on the front and rear bumpers as well, but I didn't really like the way that came out. I also tried on some of the white ones, but again, I did not really like the look, so I decided not to use those. So after applying these stripes, I quickly removed them again as I didn't like the look, could then let the decals cure for a little bit and move on to applying a nice glossy clear coat. The first coat of clear has been applied. I let that sit aside to cure for about 5 to 10 minutes again, and then moved on to applying the second and final coat of clear. This one is a little bit heavier just to get it flowing out nice and even and get that super nice and glossy finish. The second coat is now applied and I'm really happy with the way that it came out. So I set it aside to cure for a couple of days, and in the meantime I can move on to the chassis and interior work.